Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Nooner with Dave LaMont. And this is an edition I cannot wait to get cranked up because I've got not one, not even two, three guests standing by, all with one purpose. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And we're obviously going to be talking about Hurricanes football today after last night's win. So I'll hold off on any thoughts I have until we bring in the guests. But a few other things. The NFL game last night, I think it finally started. I stupidly turned in at 8 o'clock and realized we were going to have a lot of foreplay before the game actually started. But not a terrible game. Interesting to watch. Watched a little Lakers-Houston, and, of course, watched the game, the win over UAB. You got Game 7, Celtics and Raptors. Doesn't matter to me who wins. For Heat fans, I suppose Toronto's a better bet because the Heat had way better success. And I think Boston's a little more frightening with the talent department, that if you feel like Boston, if they're playing at their best, is better than Miami. Now, you should have thought that way about Milwaukee, but Milwaukee ended up having some weaknesses that were exposed by team play, excellent coaching, and just outstanding. Miami was better, period. Maybe just a bad matchup for Milwaukee. That's what this stuff comes down to. I'm delighted to report that, and I feel like I should take some credit for this, the idea of a 7,000-team NCAA tournament appears not to be practical enough to go through with it. Dodged a gigantic cannonball on that one because, as I said yesterday, I literally, and I'm not joking, stomped around the house cursing to myself at the idea of a grotesquely watered-down NCAA basketball tournament. I realize that's one that brings in a lot of folks who aren't basketball fans because there's always a chance of an upset, but I don't know if those same fans would have been watching the 133 versus 211 seed game anytime soon, no matter who is playing in it. So smart move. Let's earn your way into that tournament. And, if you want to do something before the season and invite everybody in there, you go right ahead. But no, let's not mess with something that is sacred. They'd be like, okay, everybody who plays golf can now go to Augusta National. Let's all let them in. What the hell? Not happening and shouldn't happen. All right, let's get weight to it because I've got three people here, and I don't even know how this is going to look. So let me bring in one by one the threesome known as the Orange Bowl Boys, who have turned their podcast into a massive success. And they've got work to do today. So here is Toast, whom you all know, of course, from the Paul Castronovo Show, as well as the Orange Bowl Boys podcast. Let's add Scoop. And I'm doing good. And Roman, holy cow, look at this.
Hey, we're all here. What happened to my background?
Absolutely unbelievable.
Nice.
Scoop, I'm impressed with the background. This is a painting we bought for like
I'm
$20. Yes.
There we go. I'm in the bubble.
All right. Let's start around the room. Roman, I'll start with you. I'm of the God just win baby school, and we'll worry about how later, especially with the new approach. What were your reviews? Particularly, let's talk offense first because that was the big talking point coming into the game.
You know, I felt like we just did a podcast too just before we jumped on it, and I think one of the talking points, Dave, was the fact that I don't think the Miami offense was operating on all cylinders last night. It just seemed like it had this capability to be like a 12-cylinder, well-oiled machine, and I would say it was about 6 to 5 cylinders were working last night. The good news is that Miami only eclipsed 30 points twice last year under Dan Enos. The other good news is when you run it for 52 times for 337 yards, that's not bad for not operating on all cylinders. Miami was last year in the ACC running the ball. They only rushed for 118 yards per game. So if you turn around and you get 337 and what I would consider more of a ground and pound slug it out for a majority of the game, I like the direction where that's going, Dave. I really do.
All right, Scoop.
We've got some contention between the three of us.
Good.
I'll tell you that. I'm a little on both sides. I'm always kind of the middleman between these two, but I'm a little on both sides because I do understand Toast has some issues with the offensive line play, which his whole thing is, well, if King wasn't there and if Cam didn't break that run and if Miami didn't score 31 points instead of 13. He's playing all these hypotheticals, which I just don't quite understand. Look, the reality is King is there, and he's there because he's special, and he has the ability that many other players in this country don't simply have, and he gives you that extra, the extra specialness, if you want to say it. right? And Cam didn't break the run, and he broke the run because of somewhat of the offensive line. But if you look at Rowe's breakdown on that run, also because of Will Mallory, who couldn't block to save his life last year. Justice and Lashley have him blocking a little better from what we see in the first game. Look, they haven't rushed for that many yards in 16 seasons,
right?
In a single game. So, and we said this since Lashley got here, we love the spread. That's all we've been clamoring for. But the reality is he's a run-heavy spread guy. You run to win, you pass to whatever he says. And
put up points.
That's the truth. Right. And that's the truth. He's until he got to Sonny Dykes at SMU, he had no familiarity with the air raid for the most part. He's more of an Auburn kind of run-heavy spread, whatever you want to call it, which I love. Look, I run the ball. I love to see him run the ball. 337 yards. I don't care. Toast's going to give you some clamoring nonsense now.
Well, I'm ready for that. First off,
let's listen to this ridiculous.
First off, I knew that already, but second, because I'm used to it. But secondly, Toast, I saw some of your tweets today, and I know you guys are dropping a podcast on the Orange Bowl boys around 2:00. So for folks who want to get even more in depth than we're going to get today, this is what you need to do is listen to them. So, all right. So they set you up. So let's hear it.
All right. So listen, it was, I guess first of all, you need to understand that I am a pessimist at heart. I'm always going to be a glass.
Attaboy.
That's just the reality. So that's who I am. So you got to realize that I was upset when the season ended last year. The way it ended, losing to FIU, the worst loss in program history. I was down. These two idiots got me drinking the Kool-Aid all off season. With Lashley coming in, they built me up so friggin' high for this game, and then they come out, and I want to be honest. And you want to say hypothetical. If King's not our quarterback, we lose that game to UAB, and that should never happen for Miami. The backup quarterback should be good enough, but that wouldn't have happened last night. Any other team, UM loses that game last night. Last year, UM loses that game. So that's the first thing. If you want to go ahead and tell me there's going to be run heavy spread and you're going to run 2-to-1 ratio, run versus pass, fine. Okay. If you want to put all your eggs in the basket that we have to survive running behind an offensive line that all three of us and all Canes fans were shredding last year and basically no one's changed, they've just gotten an extra year of attrition, I don't know how you feel confident about that. And if you're going to do that, your quarterback has to keep the defense honest. And you do that by stretching them out when they bring that safety down and hitting them deep. He tried that last night. He was 0 for 4. And he wasn't even close. His intermediate passing game, the best pass he threw all night to me was the back shoulder to Brevin Jordan. But the intermediate passing game was non-existent. He couldn't hit the deep throw. And I'm just saying to myself, if this wasn't UAB, we're screwed. And these two guys are telling me, well, UAB had the 18th ranked rushing defense last year. Stop. They're in Conference USA. They played Western Kentucky, North Texas. If they were in the ACC or the Big Ten or the SEC, their rushing defense would have been in the 70s or 80s nationwide, and we all know that. So don't give me this whole, they were 18th. They played nobody. Tennessee ran it down their throat. Southern Miss ran it down their throat last year. So don't give me this, they're an amazing running defense, because they're not. It's all about the competition you play. Conference USA sucks. So, yeah. Listen, a win is a win, Dave. You're correct. A win is a win, and we got that, and that's fine. But I'm looking at Louisville on Saturday, and I'm friggin' terrified.
All right. Well, here's a couple of things that I saw. I saw some Baylor notions, not Baylor concepts in there a few times with those really wide lanes where and that's to run the ball. I mean, that whole idea there is to expand the running lanes. It looks like a passing offense. I think there's a huge misnomer that the spread is throwing the ball 90 times a game. It's kind of the opposite of that. And any coach that I've ever run into who runs that style really does want to run it down your throat and including with the quarterback. So I'll ask, and by the way, again, to talk about what these guys do, if you follow Roman on Twitter, he does the Zapruder film breakdown stuff. I mean, the bullets going right in here. He's all over this stuff. These guys do an amazing job of breaking down literally every person on the field. And on the running game, specifically with King, guys, how many do you think were called runs, and how many of them were, holy crap, I got to do something because the play is broken down runs?
Well, the longest run of his night was a broken down pass play because the offensive line couldn't keep him off his ass. Sorry.
Yeah, but see, Coach, this is killing me.
But you know what?
Oh,
Before
my
you
God.
guys answer, at least you have somebody who can do that.
Yeah,
Yes,
true.
But see,
But
Dave,
if he's not there, Dave, if he's not our quarterback,
If
Tate Martell is our quarterback.
I mean, you
wouldn't have had a quarterback. He was suspended.
yes, good point. Good point, Dave. See, it's
Mark
just
Richt would have had to come back and play quarterback.
it's just the hidden things. Just on that 4th and 1 with Cam. I mean, you said how many are design runs. I want to go to Cam's run. I'm not dodging the question. I'm just telling you the way that the play operated and worked. The defensive linebacker, the rush linebacker, went after De'Aaron King because he was afraid that he was going to keep it and post it for a run. That's what that running ability does. So even when he wasn't running the ball effectively, that could have been a play. Like Cam Harris's long 63-yard touchdown could have been a play for De'Aaron King. It was a post-snap read. It sprung it, and that's the ability of a dual-threat quarterback like De'Aaron King, our Ferrari with feet. He's the one who set up that touchdown just as much. Offensive line did a really good job there. So I think there was a lot of calls for him last night, but you got to give UAB a little bit. They died on this hill now too, Dave. They essentially were going to take away De'Aaron King's ability to keep the zone read. So there was a lot of times where they were just checking him, and they were going to and you can't blame them because other than Cam Harris, you had some hyperbole, some camp speak about 2 freshman running backs. We thought they were pretty good. You know, obviously you got like the Broward leader and the Dade leader coming in. That's the way Miami should recruit it. But you have some questions. So UAB just took what they knew. They took the guy who last time was effective and played a full season. He scored 50 touchdowns in 2.5 less games. I would check that guy too. But the ability for the running backs to go ahead and use the ability of De'Aaron King's run threat is what I'm going to focus on more. Not what was called, what was his ability to keep it. And that was what sprung a lot of the opportunities for the running backs last night, and that's why you put up so many rushing yards. And I want to applaud you too, because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, this is like Baylor. This is like Kendall to Kendall. This is exactly what Baylor would do. They would spread you out, and they would just literally ram it down your throat, and that's exactly what they did to a year ago an impressive defense. I mean, they were only one, like they were 18th. You know what? And you know who was 17th? Your Miami Hurricanes. That was the 17th ranked rushing defense last year. UAB was 18th. And to poke holes in yours, Toast, if UAB was in the SEC, I'm looking at you up there. If UAB was in the SEC, doesn't that mean, Scoop, help me out here, that they would have SEC recruits, right? They would get better recruits because they're in the SEC?
Wow,
like, why do you want to put a Conference USA, like they don't recruit better by going to the SEC? They won't be able to get other schools. I mean, they are in the same state of Alabama. That's going to be tough.
What conference is you in?
Yeah.
I will say this, and I am also a diehard Seattle Seahawks fan. And watching that game last night, there were absolute visions of Russell Wilson. I mean, I saw King doing things that I've only seen Russell Wilson do. Now, that's with his feet. I didn't see the arm and the touch that Russell Wilson also brings to the table, which is huge. But at least from a foot standpoint and that escapability, bro, he can extend plays as good as anybody. There's no one in college football that's going to be able to extend plays better than De'Aaron King, and that was absolutely something cool to see last night. If he can get that deep pass down, then it's a whole new story for me.
Scoop, what about that? Because I was reading some criticism about King's, and from what I saw, he was a little scatter-armed. Is there something there that concerns you in the way he throws it, or was that just one of those nights?
I think it's one of those nights because, I mean, the reality is you look back at his, and I know that the Toast doesn't like to reminisce and look back at actual highlight footage of this kid and the fact that he had 50 touchdowns a couple of years ago.
Well, if he only did, hypothetically.
If he looked back, he could see. Yeah, De'Aaron King's got a great arm. I mean, he really does. And if you listen to all the pundits too, and I know half of them are full of gas, but the reality is that a lot of them, they're like, yeah, this kid's got a rifle for an arm. He's got a good arm. I've seen him throw the deep ball. I've seen him throw the intermediate routes. You can't tell me that he didn't have an off night throwing the football. He had some good ones, but he missed Jeremiah Payton by 3 zip codes. Right. And he was standing there by himself. And he missed Harley on the go route. Now, I didn't necessarily get to see how Harley released on that route. I don't know if he was held up. I don't know if he got tripped up halfway through the route. And that was actually a decent ball because it was 5 yards overthrown. It's not as though it wasn't close.
That was the closest. That was the closest.
You have to think that maybe something else was factoring into that. I'm not concerned about it. I've seen him throw it in the past. I'm good with it. And going back to your Baylor comment, man, within the first series, I'm watching my television and there's not I was so happy. There's not a single receiver on my TV. Right? I was literally going to stop it and screenshot it and tweet it out and go, there's not a single receiver, not one, right? Not a single. There's 7 people on the screen and no one else. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And why is that, Toast? What are they doing?
Not throwing it out a little bit. They're spreading it out a little bit.
To do what?
A little bit.
A little bit to find open spaces. I know what you're trying to get to. I got you.
All right, I'm just asking.
I will say this, Dave. There was another concern that I had, and it had nothing to do with the players. But by my math, this is the 5th game in a row that the Canes have come into a game where they did not play the week prior. They just came out flat. First game of last year, after the bye weeks last year, before the Louisiana Tech Bowl game last year, and now this time. And that's a coaching thing now. And now that's a trend. That's 5 consecutive. He's never come out and had this team fired up coming out of a week off. And that worries me because you got 2 byes this year going into big games. And that worries me. That's a coaching thing, I think.
Well, listen, they've had, no matter who is coaching, there have been some pretty flat bowl performances over the last several years. And why that is, I'll never understand. Maybe they just, last year at 6-6, that was probably a who gives a hoot kind of game for them. But that's a fair point. I don't know what you do differently. I would have to think the coaching staff is aware of this, and they have to be self-examining as to what they can do a little bit differently. But I got to be honest with you guys. I kind of expect everybody to be a little flat, considering the circumstances have been so goofy. Yes, you should be excited to play at all times. I do believe that. But you walk out and, despite any jokes folks want to make about the crowd size, there's no atmosphere in the building. I mean, how many of you all were there?
No, we're going to FSU and UNC.
All right. So you'll have a little bit more atmosphere there, but not a lot more.
No.
It is not going to feel like a Florida State game. And North Carolina could be pretty damn good this year. And you're not going to get that where the crowd can influence an opposing player. So I think that's a fair point to bring up. I'll ask you guys, how do you think that could be combated?
Well, maybe first of all, the opposing team will allow them to create some crowd noise.
Yeah,
I mean, is UAB really that much of a bro? You're not at home. Like, just act like you're on the road. Quit being babies. Let them pipe in a little bit of noise to give yourself some atmosphere. I mean, that to me is just so ridiculous. I don't think that they should give. I think there should be a set standard for that, right? So the
I think there is in the ACC. Dave, didn't the ACC? Yeah, there's a set for the ACC games. There will be, yeah.
Oh, for the ACC, their games there will be.
Yeah, I think so.
For the one-off game that you had to agree to it.
Right.
Oh, okay. Babies from Birmingham. That's one way to combat it. Here's the thing. Did Miami score on the second drive or the third drive offensively?
They scored on
not the first.
I think it was the third. I think it was the third drive.
It was the third.
Okay, so they were a little flat. And we said this before earlier this week on the show. Defensively, we figured they would come out a little flat. You're going up against somebody you really haven't. They've had all the time to prepare for you, and they're going to come out and they're going to throw a few wrinkles at you. I thought the first play, nice little misdirection bootleg. The guy was wide open by 15 yards, and he's taking advantage of the aggressiveness of Miami's defense and so on and so forth. You knew they were going to get gashed the first series. You hope it didn't last to the second series, and UAB didn't get any points out of that gashing. They didn't get a long run for a touchdown or something, and they held their ground. They figured it out. They made the adjustments, and realistically, they gave up, one touchdown. Another one was a very short field off Pope's fumble on the return. Defensively, they came out a little flat, but they really ratcheted up. I mean, they tightened that whole thing down. UAB can score now. They've scored a lot over the past 3 seasons. So aside from the secondary being a little, I thought defense played really, really well.
And that quarterback has been there since like 1963.
Yep.
I mean, he's a veteran guy who's not going to get, he's not going to get shaken. And the fact that program even has a heartbeat in itself is a miracle. And the fact that they're a respectable bowl team program in a very short period of time speaks to Bill Clark's ability to organize a team and that ability to recruit in a decent area. But look who he's not fighting Alabama or Auburn for his players. But still, I mean, that in itself is a remarkable rise. I was going to get to the defense. So, Scoop, I've got your review of the defense. Roman, what have you found in your film study about the defense that maybe you liked and maybe you didn't like?
You know what? When I was hearing Scoop talk, and I don't do this often, but I'm going to give him credit. And it kind of parlays on the question that you asked, Dave. And it was just the fact that what can Miami do? Well, as he was talking, I was thinking of the legendary broadcaster Keith Jackson, and he had this line: when you had a great Miami defense, oh, you just simply can't run outside on this defense. Right. And teams would either try to run right at them, misdirection them, counter, and screen them to death. And that's what UAB did early, and Scoop's absolutely right. They kind of little misdirection, roll, put it out into the flat. I think that as a defensive staff, they could kind of count on that. They realize Miami's a fast team, and they borrowed, Dave, for me, they borrowed a lot of that FIU game plan. They know that they can come after you with a potential 2 first-round tandem on the pass rush with Phillips and Roche, right? Roche, they were as advertised. But UAB, teams like that, they're not going to die on the hill that Dan Enos did last year. They're not going to hold the ball for 5 hours, right? They're not going to do that. So what they did is they get rid of the ball quick. You can see this happening. Like, they don't want to do it, and you got to give ultimate credit again. What did I feel that the defense needed to do that they didn't? They didn't create the turnover. That's been Miami's calling card. That is the thing that synergistically just would feed the offense into going to another 3 and out. And we didn't get to see that because this year I don't think that's going to happen. I really thought, Dave, that the offense was still the more emotional trendsetter last night. And I was looking at this and I was like, it seemed like more sparks, even though they weren't operating on all cylinders. We can all agree on that. They still were the emotional trendsetter. So I need that defense to kind of settle in their game early. That's what I was seeing. Not fall for some of the misdirection stuff early. Try to get a turnover because that's when Miami's going to be fun. That's what turns a 31-point game into a 40 to 50-point game for the University of Miami when the defense could go ahead and put the offense back in an advantageous spot.
The ACC looms. Louisville's next, and we know Clemson. We know about some of the other teams.
Nope.
They covered it pretty well. I mean,
I got something they didn't mention. How about
go ahead.
That Nesta was a force that we all know that we need him to be. You need that guy in the middle. And one thing they didn't bring up is, listen, the cornerback position is still just an issue, especially on one side and not Junior's side, the other side. I'm just not sure how that's going to play out the entire season. So that's a bit of a concern. Got to bring some negativity to it.
Well, you know, you're taking my job and it's making my job so much easier. You can be the negative guy today, and I'm down with that 100%. All right, with the ACC looming, besides Clemson, the obvious choice, who else do you guys, and Toast, I'll start with you this time. Who do you look at the ACC and go, uh-oh, I'm a little worried about this team?
Well, I'm worried about the Louisville offense and their speed. I'm not so much as worried about them as making the ACC championship game this year. But Clemson, UNC, your buddy Mac Brown, I am just thoroughly impressed with what he has done in a very short time up there with Hal, with the quarterback. I think that's the biggest competition for the Canes. Them and Pittsburgh has a good defense. I mean, listen, ACC's has a lot of good teams this year, and the fact that you're not playing divisions this year, that it's all just one. I don't think you can get through it with more than 2 losses and still be in the ACC championship game consideration or talk. And that's what Canes fans expect. So it's like you're looking at the schedule. All right, Clemson's probably going to be a loss, you would think. Then you got room for maybe one more, but I'm not sure you got room for a whole lot more than that. So where the win's going to come from? And listen, it's a tough schedule. It is.
Scoop, what do you got? Who do you look at besides the obvious one, the big boys from South Carolina?
Man, when we had the regular schedule, I was scared to death of Louisville. I predict them to lose to Louisville. I'm not as scared, but with a 17% chance or whatever nonsense they got thrown out there to beat them next week, got me a little concerned. I'm a little confused by it. Look, Louisville's probably the fastest team we've seen in the last decade. We saw them last year. We couldn't believe how fast they were. And speed kills, right? So at any point, you're gonna potentially face some issues with that. I never liked Pitt. I always hate the Pitt game. That's always an issue game. I don't know. I'm not. Here's the thing. If the offense can continue to progress, I think we're going to be fine. You're going to have trip ups. It's Miami. I feel like until they prove that they're not going to step on their then you're going to have you're just kind of expected at some point.
Well, Roman, again, leaving Clemson out of the equation, who else do you look at in the ACC with some respect?
Man, it's hard for me to admit this because they're not really official ACC members.
Oh, no. You're really going there? Oh.
But you got to at least give them somewhat credit to make things interesting, right? Notre Dame coming in here as the, head honcho independent. Let me keep all my NBC money, and let me go ahead and just piggyback into this ACC network deal. Great job, Notre Dame. Good job.
That's what you get. It's good to be the king, as Mel Brooks once said.
Yes, and they're the king of the TV deal. Let's make no bones about it. They'll keep things interesting. They've always fared well in the ACC. I still remember that one marquee game where I think it was Clemson's first national championship. I think that was, Renfrew's 7th year with the program. He stayed there another 10 years after.
I think he played for Danny Ford when they won their first title.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Dabo was still in diapers when Renfrew was on the sideline. But the reality is, I remember that game. It was a very marquee matchup when Notre Dame played Clemson. It was at night. The atmosphere in Death Valley, the other one, was electric. So I want to see what Notre Dame can do. And obviously, I think the tier 1 is going to be Clemson, and then you have the tier 2 for me is going to be UNC, Louisville, and Notre Dame. I think Miami needs to prove where it's going to fit in with those tiers.
Absolutely.
You know what? There's a secondary tier there for me, Dave, and it's probably tier 1.5. If you could beat your Louisville, if you could beat your UNC, then you're fearing in that 1.5 tier, because I still don't think you're on Clemson's tier. You got room for margin, but next week's a big week. Next week, and we all know the biggest jump you'll see a team make is from week 1 to 2. That's when you get a lot of the team's makeup and DNA, and you usually see the biggest improvement from week 1 to week 2. Now, I keep doing this, but last year it went from the first play, and we went in reverse after that. I thought our first play last year was the best play we had.
The first series was brilliant.
And then we went down. But in most cases, week 1 to week 2, you'll see the biggest offensive jump. So I'm curious to see what the Miami offense is going to do. I think defense knows who Louisville is. I mean, just go back to a year ago in that 2-2 Atwell play. He just took a simple mesh. He took a drag. Everybody had the angle on that guy, and he ran and made it look like it was effortless. And so Miami knows what speed they're dealing with, and I think they'll at least Louisville's got their attention. Plus, it's on the road.
Right.
We'll see.
And 3:30 on ABC next week, too. That was announced earlier today. I have said many times that the dirtiest, filthiest word in the sports language is expectations. Because if you look at, for example, just to go to baseball real fast, how PO'd are Yankees fans right now?
I don't know.
They expected to go 60-0, and they're having some struggles. Whereas, like Marlins fans are seeing a team at 500 and they're giddy. So it's a dirty word. And for Miami Hurricanes football fans, it is the filthiest of words, because every year the expectations are high. And unfortunately, we all know where the results have been for the most part lately. So expectations, Toast, for this season. Now that you've had a chance to get a game under your belt, are they better, worse, or the same?
I mean, listen, I was very optimistic. We did a season picks a couple episodes ago, and I came in with the Canes finishing second and playing Clemson in the title game and having a record of 9-2 after the regular season. Listen, I know that was overly optimistic. It was, listen, as I said, they forced me to drink the Kool-Aid all offseason, and I was gulping it down like crazy, even sticking my finger in there and just sucking on the sugary goodness. But I guess I'll say, man, right now, after last night, I'm concerned that we get to 7.
Scoop?
First of all, Toast, you're an adult. You can make your own decisions. I don't think that Ro and I should be able to sway you in any way. Having you drink Kool-Aid. I haven't the slightest idea. I can't remember what I said.
Oh, you had the worst record. You were 8-3 because Ro was 10-1.
Oh, okay. I'll stick with 8-3. I'll stick with 8-3. I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
because I
you're-
think there's
you're
going to be
saying
a
the
loss
same.
or two that we shouldn't lose. Shouldn't.
And
Right.
that has been a problem over the years, as we well know. Last year, no worse. All right, so 10-1 still on your board after last night, or are you going to bring it down a notch?
I was a weird 10-1 because I said I can't figure out where the other loss will be. So when you put me and you replay the tape, it was 10-1. I realistically thought we'd lose 2.
Yeah.
So it was a weird 10-1. I can't take that back now.
He went
After
so
last
heavy
night-
against your boy Mac, though.
You know
Yeah.
what? You know what's gonna be the interesting. I'm gonna have a better understanding because of what I just said. You see the biggest jump in the offense between week 1 and 2, and the team in general. How you handle a tier 2 ACC team, because that's the team that's picked second in the Atlantic right now, right? It's Louisville.
Mhm.
All the pundits have them right behind it. So that is the team that could potentially, right? If you're second in the Atlantic, even though there's no Atlantic or Coastal anymore, you could be playing in the ACC championship game. So you're playing the pundits pick to potentially play in the ACC championship game. I want to see what they do then. If they could turn around and this week is a pivotal week for the Hurricanes. They got a big test. If they turn around, handle their business, win by a couple scores. I'm not expecting a blowout like last year, but if they can win by a couple scores, offense looks a little bit better. Defense is what we've known the defense to be. It has been a proven commodity and entity since Manny Diaz has gotten here. I know last year Hurricanes fans want to give him a lot of flack, but how are you going to give flack to the top number 13 team in the country in terms of that? I told people, and it blew people's minds. I'm like, do you know Miami's defensive rankings in terms of rush defense, pass, all of those things? They were better, hands down, than Clemson and Oklahoma. Now, I mean, not Clemson, but LSU and Oklahoma. The Miami defense in the major categories were above Oklahoma, and that's not saying much at Oklahoma. I get it. LSU, there could be something. We just knew the problem was on the offensive side of the ball. I think the defense is going to come to play against Louisville. I really do. They're still going to score some points against the Miami Hurricanes. I want to see the offense. If the offense does what I think it can, Dave, this week against Louisville, then I'm gonna stand pat and stand firm and say, Miami loses one, no more than 2 games.
Okay.
If we struggle, I'm gonna be like, I'll hedge it down to toast or scoop land and say 8-4 or 8-3, 7-4. Because I
What's
can.
acceptable? All right. Last question, and I know I'll let you guys go because you've been talking about this all morning long, but just a quick, what's an acceptable number, Toast? A number where you get to this number of wins and very few people are going to be on Manny Diaz's back.
Oh, I think that number is absolutely 8. I think that's the number that, I mean, listen, we've been playing this game now for 20 years as Canes fans. And I think that, yeah, I mean, if you don't make the ACC championship game and with this new normal we're in, so there's, I don't think there's any chance that unless the wheels fall off that Manny is not back for a third season. But I think that number to appease Canes fans and not make the title game is 8 wins. Go 8-3. You were close to making the title game. You get a good bowl, and we'll move on with the recruiting class coming in. You won't lose recruits. You'll still keep those recruits that have committed. There'll be no FIU situation. So yeah, I go 8-3.
If you guys good with that, I saw both of you nod your heads that 8 is enough, and that's your prediction anyway. Scoop was 8, so obviously that's the number you settle on. I think I'm just tired of. Well, the Canes won the offseason again.
Yeah.
And the season starts, and the winning is only off and on. And I think that's one. And again, that goes back to expectations. I mean, remember last year in the summer, they're killing it on Twitter. They're killing it with this and killing it with that. And then they get killed and wind up with a sub 500 record. I think that's a little bit tough to take.
If we replace offensive coordinators again this offseason, we're going to have a problem with these two.
And he means the guys down here.
Right here, the 2 guys behind me. Yeah, both them. These guys, yeah.
Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough. I mean, you're coming up on podcast number 100, are you not?
Yes.
We are.
When will that? Now, what's today's is going to be 99?
Today was just a post game. This week's was a 98. So we got 99, and then so 100 is actually FSU week.
FSU week.
Well, how did you know how to do that? I'm going to pretend that you planned that.
Yes.
So are we.
And say that's what it's done. This is the place to go. These 3 right here, again, on Twitter as well, because they've got the Orange Bowl boys. They all have their own Twitter accounts. And, of course, Toast will battle with his Gator friend, Paul Castronovo, on a daily basis once the football season is here. But for you guys to do your podcast and then jump in right away and do mine, I really appreciate that. I would love to talk to you when the season's over.
Yes.
And see how we all look at this and go, okay, we were right about this and wrong about that. It ought to be a lot of fun. But, again, I cannot thank you enough for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, we love you, Dave.
Blast, man. Always.
Take care, guys. All right. There's the Orange Bowl boys. Follow them
Thanks,
on
Dave.
Twitter. Congratulations to them for the huge success. You can actually be a patron, right? People can pay you.
Go to patreon.com/Orange Bowl Boys. That'd be awesome.
I probably can't afford it, but but the exclusive content. Look out what happens there, boys. That's going to be pretty racy. I guarantee you. That'll do it. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the somewhat full return of college football and the NFL, and we'll talk to you Monday on the Nooner. Take care, everybody. Bye.